Hello and welcome to an episode of the BIMvoice podcast. Today we are going to have a little bit different episode. We are going to have a workshop. Our guest is someone from the first episode of the podcast. I'm talking about Lucian Ungureanu, who's a lecturer at the Technical University of Berlin. And he is going to show us a little bit how is he using BIM 360 and introduce us a little bit into this. Hi, Lucian. How are you doing?
Hi, Petru. I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me. So I'm pretty excited to talk a bit about BIM 360. Probably in the short time we have, I will not be able to introduce in really great detail BIM 360, but I hope that the listeners and the ones which who are going to watch the podcast or the recording of this podcast will be able to get a little bit of an idea on the capabilities of BIM 360.
Yes, sure.
That's perfect. So, shall we get started? I think one important thing, probably to say few words about BIM 360. So we all know that slowly our industry kind of benefits from, let's say, technology infusion or some technology developments, especially or specific for our field, and mainly that are addressing some of the pain points of the industry, such as fragmentation and kind of distributed information. We all know that people like to store the information in their computers, and the old on the old school process would be that they have an internal server, and that information stored there is hardly accessible to some of the stakeholders involved in the project, such as the constructor or main contractor, maybe the project management consultant. Maybe the architect is not the same like the structure engineer, so they all create different models to support different views during the design. Actually, I'm pretty excited to talk about BIM 360 because it's one of the technologies which is kind of new on the market, right? It's kind of addressing this kind of pain points, right? So I was pretty excited when Autodesk announced, probably back in 2015 or 16, that they are gonna release it. It's kind of built on some let's say old ideas or some frameworks, but also on some new advancements from Autodesk, right? So with BIM 360, people can do a different kind of activities or let's say processes, or let's say design different processes to support on the project activities such as document management, collaboration, right? Design collaboration, coordination, maybe talking about the quality and so forth, right? So BIM 360 actually allows the practitioners to have all the information in one place, and also to have access anytime from anywhere. One of the biggest issues was, and I hope people manage to get rid of this, like when going on the construction site and finding out that you have the wrong construction document with you. So with BIM 360, this issue is no longer there, because if you have a tablet or even a laptop with you, you can just connect to the internet, log into your online or BIM 360 account, and get the latest version of the construction documents you need. And that's a little bit of idea. Like I mentioned, it's one of the progresses which I'm really happy that happened. It's basically the switch from distributed storages to a cloud-based information storage and access. So basically, of course, in order to use BIM 360, you will need an account, and to your account, you need to have a valid license link from Autodesk. So if you don't have a valid license, you can create an account and request a 30 days trial, for example.
I understand. Before you proceed, if I may ask with a more basic question, what is actually BIM 360? How is defined as in our tool for designers?
So for designers, you can call it like cloud platform or a web-based platform, which allows you to streamline some of the processes from your project. Like I mentioned, like the document management, collaboration, coordination, and also some issues about constructability. I think it's like a very good overview of different possibilities or different services which you can have um, using BIM 360. It's given by the official page from Autodesk, right? So we're talking about design collaboration. So the collaboration is like people being able to author design in the same time and the same models and so forth. We talk about the coordination, maybe discussing some design issues, maybe discussing about issues around some clashes you might have. You can start making reviews of your documents. So there are some embedded workflows you can, let's say, predefine and use on projects, such as, I think the best analogy I can make here is like with this areas defined in BS 1192, where you talk about the work in progress area, shared area, what was the other one, a published area, and then the archive, right? So there are four major areas. So you can think about, so for example, when moving, let's say, documents, or changing the status of the documents from one area, like the work in progress, where you basically have the working versions of the documents, to the shared area where you share it with a specific purpose. Sometimes you share it for coordination, sometimes you share it like for construction, right? Then you need to follow a specific quality assurance, a quality QA/QC, right, workflow. Like someone is authoring let's say, the documents, like the models and the drawings. Someone needs to check them, to review them, right? And then you go around this loop until the documents are suitable to be, let's say, shared with the other parties, for example. And then we talk about the document management. These documents are going to be stored on the cloud, like I mentioned, accessible to all the organizations on the project. And also, you have the versioning control. You can think about comparing different versions. You can start. I'm going to show you a little bit in a minute some of the features.
Sure.
Like I mentioned, like the quality management, safety management, RFIs is request for information, which usually you, let's say, when asking other people to give you more information. And then a kind of a new module, I'm not really quite familiar with it, but it basically going to show you a little bit of insight into your project, for example, reporting and analytics. And I know for sure that somewhere under the hood here, they Autodesk implemented some machine learning methods to predict you, or to help you, give you a little bit of insight
Hmm.
of where on your project something might go wrong, for example.
I understand. Uh, you gave us a very, very detailed answer. Uh, I was aiming actually to what BIM 360 is. It's a CDE, a common data environment, and
I was actually avoiding to call it like that. I think there are still some things to be done around it, but it's actually it can serve as a common data environment on the project. But yeah, as a new technology, I know that right beginning of this week, Autodesk it's releasing quite often updates and improvements on BIM 360. They are doing that incremental and agile way, getting feedback from the users and implementing different features. So I think it's on the some people will call it directly a CDE. I'm still missing some of the functionality to actually call it a CDE.
Okay, do you have other examples, other better examples? What are other CDEs out there? Like, if I may ask.
I cannot give you an answer because I kind of lose track of some of the other platforms existing out which exist out there. Maybe I can look up and maybe leave a kind of
No, but I mean from your experience, if you have used something that you felt it was more complete, because I don't know to my personally I don't know another more popular one, so that's why I'm asking.
there are some efforts. I mean, like I mentioned, I'm not up to speed with what's happening with the other companies or with the development of other components. I know for sure that back in 2016, when I was struggling to have a CD set up on the project, there were no good solutions on the market. So we had to actually put together wire together different let's say tools which will allow us to let's say achieve that status of CDE, of common data environment.
Yeah.
But I think nowadays BIM 360 it's one of the top let's say platforms out there which people can actually use as a CDE. But of course is one of the reasons I actually avoided to call it a CDE because people on projects they I mean there are some generic definitions for common data environments out there, but usually on the project they have to define what's actually a CD for them, right? And then if the some of the functionality from BIM 360 it's not there to cover specific workflows, they want to like I mentioned, for example, the workflow defined in BS 1192. I'm not aware, so I cannot give you too much details around this, but probably you can find a way to define it in BIM 360, for example. But I still have to look into that into more details to actually tell you for sure that that is possible.
That's fine. Okay, now I'll stop nagging you, and yeah, just please go ahead, start presenting us a little bit the platform. And
Well, so let's move this one on the other screen, and then let's get back to this view. So usually, yeah, like I mentioned, you need an account. You register if you don't have one. If you don't have a license, ask for a trial version. And one thing to mention, there are different modules for BIM 360. But somehow all these are connected together, right? So you can see it like the architecture, let's say behind the platform. It's something similar to microservices, right? Instead of having, let's say, you have only like we are used a big chunk of piece of software, you have it kind of distributed and linked with each other as microservices, right? But give an overview, there is BIM 360 docs, there is BIM 360 design, build, and probably I missed one because I think there are four.
what's the difference between them? They have they aim to different phases of the project.
I think the separation between them nowadays gets a little bit blurred, and I will show you what's happening. But for example, when you're talking about BIM 360 docs, its main purpose is for coordination, for document management, right? So if you want to try out BIM 360 docs, then you have to apply for a trial for BIM 360 docs, and then you have BIM 360 collaboration, design collaboration, right? So for design collaboration, basically in the past people were actually using this work sharing and Revit server to be able to work together on the same models, right? And now, because of this strong integration between Revit and BIM 360, and you also have this integration with AutoCAD and Civil 3D, for example, right? So you are now able to get rid of Revit server, which in my opinion was sometimes, I mean, for that time was good to work with, but it was a nightmare because it was too dependent on some infrastructure related to your company or to the location where we were. So with the collaboration, you can organize your work, who's going to do that, what, and then you can track and then working on the same model and so forth, right? And then you have the coordination. The coordination, which was previously called BIM 360 Glue, now it's called coordination, and then it's actually better integrated with all the other parts, right? So it basically allows you to do coordination on the project. So you can invite people and create different views, different issues, and so forth, and discuss on those. Besides that, out of the box, once you define like a coordination model, every time a new version of a model is uploaded, it's going to run automatically clash detection, right? As a former BIM manager, let's say, I know how painful was that every time when they had a new model, a new version of a model, opening everything up in Navisworks and running clash detection, and then depending on how you define like the matrix, the clash detection matrix, then sometimes, and depending on the size of the project, you might have sometimes to open 10, 20 Navisworks files to run the clash detection, for example, right?
I see.
And then you had to do it, upload the model, the new one, and so forth. So that was that's one of the things I really like, because once someone pushes a new version of the design, it's going to run again clash detection, and you can even track like the progress, right? So you see, compare with the previous version and so forth. And then the other one is field. Imagine that now you have access to your documents, right? And then you go on the construction site. It works very well on the tablet, so you have field. So you might have defined checklists, things you want to check regarding your project, right? So you have checklists, or you can even raise issues regarding different parts of the project while you're on the construction site. So that's also really cool, right? Because you can even take pictures and raise an issue with the picture and so forth. So that's I think the four main parts of BIM 360. Although nowadays was a little bit split in more modules accessible via BIM 360.
Yeah, cool.
Okay,
Go ahead. Please go ahead and show us around.
okay. Let me show a bit of what's happening in BIM 360. So you sign in. I have my credentials, sign in. So now you basically, once you have access to an account, you'll be able to, let's say, access different projects you have access, right? So if you are, you can be an administrator of an account, like I am for this one, right? And then give other people access to different projects or different parts of the project, or you can be just a normal user and someone is going to give you access to specific projects or part of the projects, right? So basically, if you are an account administrator, when you go on this 9 dots square under the BIM, under the Autodesk BIM 360, right? So you will have access to this account admin.
Mm-hmm.
So as an account administrator, you can start thinking about adding different projects. So for example, yeah, you can um, um, let me let me skip this part, right? So right, so you have the possibility to like any administrator, right? So you add projects, you add or remove members from your member companies, you define roles
Yeah.
on your project, right? So you might have a BIM manager, BIM coordinators. There are already a bunch of predefined roles within the BIM 360 environment, a really big list, I would say, right? And then because you have to define for each one of the roles, you define um, what they will have access to, for example. But these are actually the modules in BIM 360 I was talking about, right? So you have the document management, project management, field management, assets. So this is I forgot about it, but the assets it's for asset management for tracking the life different assets or over the lifetime. Model coordination, collaboration, and insight is the one you get insight on the project, right? So this is basically you give access to different roles, or different roles will have access to different modules you have activated. Or let's put it this way, because this is like the account settings and the roles you define for the account. Once you have these things activated on the project, then they will have access to the modules, right? And then you have the analytics settings and apps. We are going to come back to the apps later. So going to projects, for example, let's start adding a new project. So BIMvoice, for example.
Yeah.
So creating a project is pretty straightforward, right? So you select like what kind of type of the project you have. Let's say maybe a convention center. Um, and then you can say it's a new construction, renovation, right? Maybe you can define the value of your project in different currencies, contract type, design and build, or maybe you can say design, build, and operate. So basically, this is kind of a metadata you provide for your project,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can say like the starting date and the end date. You already know project job number if it's needed, business unit. It can be you
Yeah.
can define different business unit. I haven't defined yet for this account. You can upload the image. You can add some address. You can define the time zone, and this is important because depending on the time zone, then you can set up some coordination stuff. Let's see. Maybe
Berlin.
Berlin,
There.
right? And the language. You have the default it's English. You can set it in German, Dutch, Chinese, French, and Swiss German. I will just go for English because I'm confident I can handle all the options, right? So once you create it, I think really important, you're actually redirected to this view where you have to activate different project services, like I mentioned. So I'm going to activate like docs. Usually, internally, each company will have some templates, right?
I see.
I don't have templates defined, so I'm going to just use the one without the template. Then project management, this is the RFI and submittals, a request for information, and then submittals. I'm going to activate it, and then field management. I will not be able to introduce all of them, but let's look at document management, model coordination, and I will not be able to introduce the design collaboration because I need some connection with Revit. And then you see the last. So this is like the one I forgot and I mentioned, right? So you have
Yes.
specific assets, you can track them over the life cycle. And then the last two. So this one, it's the previous version of being collaboration or the model collaboration or there's coordination, right? And then field, it's a old version of this one. So once you activated the specific services, right, you can go to, for example, if I'm going to project home, and I'm already, as you notice, I was already on the project settings. Project administration. Right, so you go to the project administration, you can keep adding members, you define again for the project who's going to have access to what. As you can see, for me, I haven't defined the role, but I can define one, probably contractor or maybe more. I can define the company. Like services is the window I show you with the services, and then some profile.
What was that BIM AI? I saw.
Oh, it's just is the name of the account I have. I see here. So yeah, each account will have a specific name. So I just decided to call it a Beam AI.
Okay.
So once you activated the services for the project, you have access again through this 9 dot square. You have access to this services. So for example, going to document management, right?
Yes.
Wait, it's loading. Right. So in the document management, basically, like I mentioned, this is where you do the document management. So what's cool is like through this 3 dots menu, you can actually start thinking about giving different permissions to different people, right? You can structure your project. So like I mentioned, some companies have already like a structure for their projects. They can have like different subfolders. They can say work in progress. Maybe they can have another one, another supporter, let's say shared. It's depending how they want. They have the usually the project structured internally, right? So this is depends very much on how each company has their design process structure. So once you can have, yeah. So I forgot to mention. So basically, you have two let's say main section here. So one is the project file, so you can just drop files here. So you, for example, let me go to a different one, right? To a different project I can show you. So for example, I'm going here to the 4D project. Okay, so I jumped to a different project now, the 4D, and then what I wanted to show you is especially for this one, right? So where you have like a different Revit files, for example, or the design other kind of files. I think currently BIM 360 is supporting a lot of formats, around 64 or 70, or there are a lot of formats supported by the platform. So you can just create different folders, subfolders, and the project files, and have the files here, for example. You can view the files. So like I'm doing now, right? So you can open the files, and then of course in this viewer, you can just see you can see your project, right? And then you have like the basic, let's say, functionality of the viewer, right? So you have orbit, pan, fit to view, first person. You can measure stuff, right?
Mhm.
Um, or you can add an angle or whatever, calibrate. I can click on done. And then you have like the model browser. So for each model, here you usually can see all the, also the 2D views, right? Sheet views, 2D views. So you can look at the drawings you have for
Have
the,
these been created previously in Revit, or you just can
yeah.
generate this in
So
BIM
this
360?
all this was created in Revit.
Okay.
So all the drawings were created in Revit, and now because you have them in that file, you can just access
Open them, yeah.
the drawings. And I think, let's see. So, for example, you have on the left side, you have like markups, issues, and this is just sheets and views, history, phases, and levels. So if I click on levels, I have nothing extracted for this.
Mm-hmm.
So here, right, so all the drawings or the sheets you have created in your Revit file, it will be accessible to you via this viewer. And then, of course, you can start thinking of marking up. So I'm on the markups, right? And then you can think about creating some markups or raising some issues, create new issue. You can say click on the location here, right? So you can say better quality or something like that. You can define the type of the issue, which is a really long list. You can change the status, right? Currently it's open, right? You can even say, okay, it's a draft. I'm not sure it's really a issue. You can assign it to someone from which is member of the project, and then choose a date and other stuff here, and then you can give it a description. I think this view needs better quality, create, and then you create the issue. And then you can think about doing markups. You see you have this bar here on the right, so you can create a cloud here, and then of course you can save the markups, right? And you can even add some more text to it. So for example, you can say
Mm-hmm.
hard to read, for example. And of course, this is going to save another markup. So for example, I go edit this. I'm going to add again, let's say, hard to read, and then save markup. And now we're going to have also the annotation I added here. And then, yeah, you have different annotation possibilities. So for example, I'm going to probably, let's go to 3D. So again, so even in 3D, for example, you can start erasing issues, creating issues, creating markups. So for example, you can come here and say, here you go. I want for this area here, it's a little bit like that, right? So you can say, add a charging station. Charging
Yeah,
station on the wall,
that would make sense.
right? And save the markup. And then, of course, you'll have access to all these markups here. Exit markup view. You have properties, right? So you can inspect like the properties of the walls or of all the elements. For example, I see this is in German
Mm-hmm.
because it's a project provided by the German community. It's a Revit file provided by the German community. So, and then you have also the split view mode, for example. And this is actually also, I'm going to close this one. Hopefully my computer is not going to crash. So now it basically like loads kind of, I think I crashed my computer. But for example, so then you can have like a connection, 2D with the 3D and so forth, but you can markups in both in
Yeah.
and 2D.
Yeah, you can go skip this feature if it's so resourceful.
Yeah, okay. But this is a bit like I mentioned. I mean, this is accessible through the document management, although it's more related to coordination. For example, adding markups, raising issues, and so forth. So of course, if you can see here like different versions of the file will be accessible. I only have one version for this file, but actually what I wanted to show you is the other folder. So on the other folder, I created and dropped the same Revit file. I think I can, let's see, maybe I can find it. So it's a 3D file, but as you can see here, all these files I have here are basically extracted from the Revit file. So these are the drawings, right? And you can take them one by one and start a review process or a stick process to the review and so forth.
How do you do the update here, for example? How do you do when you get a new version or new revision of the drawing? How do you update everything? Like it's something that it's automatically.
So basically, this is something I cannot show you because, like is normal, you have the file created in Revit, so you'll do the file you created in Revit or change it in Revit, and then you update it or synchronize it with the cloud, right? BIM 360, and then you'll get like new versions of the drawings as well. So if in that file the besides the fact that the file version is going to be bumped up because it's a new one, but then you'll also see a new version for the change drawing.
Uh-huh. I see. So you don't need to export the drawings from Revit. You just upload the
No,
model.
it's gonna do it. It's gonna do it automatically in the background.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that sounds cool.
yeah. It's really. I mean, it's saving a lot of time, right? So then another. So that was the view, folders view, and then we have the reviews folder. And I think I have to go to folder to submit documents for review, for example. So I'm coming here. So let's say if I'm taking this one, and then I say submit for review here. All right, so select an approval workflow. And I don't have an workflow, so I have to create one. So create an approval workflow. Let's see if there are any templates. Yeah, so one-step approval, two-step approval, or many steps approval,
Mm-hmm.
or group approval, and so forth. But let's say we go for two steps approval. And then this is going to show you like initial review, and then you do the changing, and then the final review, and so forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then let's say we can call it yeah, documents submit. Anyway, right? So and then you say, okay, who's the initiator? I am the initiator. And then it's going to be a single review or multiple reviewers. And then who's going to be the approval? I can be the approval. Let I sign myself because I'm not going to sign my colleagues because they get notifications. And then you have here like a different status, like approved, rejected, uh, and then you can add the status, approved, rejected. I'm going to delete this one. then I'm not sure. I actually have to look into to see if we can define different, let's say, uh, states for the for this process.
Mm-hmm.
And then what else do we have here? Also copy approved documents too. So you can, so once you approve the document, so like I mentioned in the beginning, you can define, okay, this is going to be the work in progress area where I store the documents I'm developing the design. And then I have a folder on my account under the project, which is going to be like the shared area. Right. So I can say, okay, share, or once the, let's say, the review is finished, I can select a folder to be copied, or I can select a folder where to copy the documents which are approved, right? And then copy to folder when any document in the review is approved, right? Or you can say, don't do it for each one, do it for all of them at once. So once you have all the documents, and then you can save. This is going to be like a template, right?
Yeah.
And I have to uncheck this one. So, and then I have this. Then I'm going back to the document management. As you see, you have here Revit Cloud Model Upgrade, which is the connection with the Revit. So as a BIM manager or BIM coordinator, the only thing you need on the project is BIM 360, because you can do all the things related to coordination and management using BIM 360. Right. So then you have the reviews, folders, and then of course your company, or depending on how you, what's the processes you define on the project, you can customize BIM 360 so that will fit your needs. Submit for review, select workflow, and then submit. So that you're initiating your review, email notification will be sent when the review is ready. I can notify other members, I can introduce a message, but I'm going to skip, right? So once you go here, you can see that specific documents under review. You set the due date for the review, you get the feedback, and then you can create transmittals. So transmittals, right? So like I mentioned, for example, you have these folders or on which you put the approved document, right? So once you have all the documents on that folder, you can create a transmittal and then send it to the contractor for
Yes.
starting the construction, right? And then you have an overview of the issues. So these are the ones I just added, right? Oh no, I think this is for the account. No, this is for the entire project, for the, right? Because I have multiple files here in the
Yeah.
project. So then all the issues you raise as a BIM manager or coordinator, you can track them all. But this is mainly for the document management. But let me show you, for example, model coordination. All right. So the model coordination. So now we are able to open a file individually. Now I have like here multiple files. Usually you have to define some coordination spaces, right? So I'm going to switch to the golden test, for example. And then you have this nice view here where you have like different files which are part of that project. Moreover, we have here, I wanted to show you something cool. Within the Revit file, I have two design options defined, right? So then I selected that file, and then now I have these two design options, which are extracted from the same file, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then are accessible for me here for coordination. So as you can see here, I actually have, here are the clashes, right?
Yeah.
So I can open, for example, I can open this one. and then this will be like the coordination view, right? So you have here like the models, you have here the
The
clashes,
clashes.
yeah. And then here will be like issues, right? So you can start doing the coordination, but usually you don't do the coordination on a single model, only if you have issues related to that specific discipline, which means that discipline should coordinate their own issues. But
Yes.
sometimes you might want to do it, right? But then I can take the architecture and structure, right, with one of the options, and then I can see both together, like in a federated view, for example. So if I have multiple models, I can open them together and do the coordination on both in the same time, right? So now you can see I have actually both. So I think you'll see that one of the issues is that, so I think the the files are not sharing the same coordinates. So
Uh-huh.
let's see. You see, so here is
Yeah.
the architecture, and then I have here the MEP is flying somewhere, right?
How do you fix that?
So that you have to fix it in Revit, right? So yeah, so because in Revit you usually define the project coordinates, like project points, and then shared coordinates. So then we can, when you bring, is the same you have to do even if you are doing coordination in Navisworks, for example, right? So you have to make sure that when you put the models together, we'll share the same coordinates. Otherwise, it happens the same. This thing where you actually have a model, it's on a different location. And I think
Displaced models,
in
yeah.
this case, it might be the elevation. You see,
Yeah, yeah.
and then other than that, it seems to be on the same on the good position. Although someone needs to check the Revit file, right? Yeah, so let's see what we have here for clashes. So you have like the primary model clash with, so you have the architecture engineering clash with the MEP, right? And then you have the possibility to group by, I don't know, system name. And then I have no clashes uh, by these models, and it's normal because as you can see,
Yeah,
I have the models. The models are not overlapping one into each other.
exactly.
So that will be the coordination. There are some clashes here. Basically, I can show you. So, for example, but it is normal, right? So, for example, when I'm selecting these two, right? So I'll have some clashes, because they are sharing the same space, being having like two design options. It's normal to share the same space, right?
Yeah.
But then once you put the architecture, you put it, or you put the MEP, then you'll also get the clashes.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's pretty heavy,
Yeah.
and you start loading, and then you can see the clashes with green and red here, but then it's loading here. Can you see it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so it's loading here, right? So then you can click, you can have a look at the clashes, and then you basically can start adding markups, and then
But let me ask you something regarding clashes.
yeah.
Would make any sense to check the clashes here? Then why do we have tools like Solibri or Navisworks? Isn't better to just check in these tools?
Well, let me put it this way, right? So imagine Solibri and Navisworks are desktop based, right?
Yes.
And then the same capability, or the same thing like checking or doing clash detection and identifying clashes, you can do it in Navisworks, right? You can do it in Solibri, or you can do it in BIM 360. what is the advantage of using BIM 360 is that you can bring the team together and then discuss on those clashes. I remember when I was working as BIM manager that the main issue was not running clash detection. The main issue was sharing the results of the clash detection with the team and then tracking what's happening with the clashes if they're solved. So the main issue was related to the management of the or coordination around clashes.
So that's why they founded they made BIM Collab and BIM Track.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's one of the things, right? So that in order to kind of overcome those limitations, people starting developing some tools which will allow them to have a better coordination or better or to define a better process around for the coordination, right, for the clash detection. Yeah, so then you have here the clashes. You can filter by models. You can select. So I have like two different views, like merge models already, right? So I can look at this one. I have no clashes because, of course, the architecture and the models are not overlapping.
Yes.
The same with the other one, right? And then, of course, it's like you can assign the clashes to someone to solve them, right? You can assign them. You can say, I'm going to assign it for coordination, right? Let's do it together. You can add comments. People will come to the coordination meeting and they will be ready if you assign to them and say, okay, please look into this and let's discuss during the coordination meeting we have tomorrow, right?
Yes.
So yeah, it mainly doing it. So let's say the model coordination module is doing kind of the same thing like Navisource is doing in terms of clash detection, but more because it allows you to have this more structure, coordination, and collaboration on the project.
I understand. But then I think you forgot to mention actually a very important aspect, how BIM 360 can become very powerful if you combine, because this is what you get when you install and you start using this app, right? But then you can use Forge and start doing customization.
Yes. So anyway, so I'm really sorry. Maybe we should do like for each module, we should do like let's say a separate session, and
A mini course.
maybe yeah for each module. But then again, it's like powerful design collaboration, field management. All of them are really useful and actually breaks this, let's say, silos and brings people together, right?
Yeah.
But of course, like any new tech, it's let's say it has some limitation, but the advantages or some features are missing, right? Because you cannot implement everything overnight, so you need time to do the development and implementation of new feature and to make sure that let's say people can rely you have a reliable platform, you provide a reliable service, right? But one of the advantages is like what makes BIM 360 really powerful. It's built on top of Forge. So Forge is let's say the open source framework, um, let's say which is also provided by Autodesk or supported by Autodesk. So using Forge, you can start if you're missing something or if you want to add something new to your process or add a module. This is all about, right? So you add something which will, let's say, fit your needs. So for example, if you are asset manager, you might have specific needs which needs to be fulfilled by such a platform, right? Maybe you can place orders or track or add more documents and so forth. You can do that, so you can have everything stored in BIM 360, right? But then you need some additional which is probably only specific to your case, right? And then it will probably not be generally implemented in BIM 360, but you can actually make use of Forge and available APIs to start developing your own apps. So this is actually what we started doing at Context, for example. So I mentioned in the beginning the account administrator and this section apps, right? So here you have feature apps, so you can actually start looking on the App Store. So these are integrations, BIM 360 integrations developed by the third parties. Maybe some of them are also developed by Autodesk. So I remember, I'm saying that because I remember that there are a lot of Revit plugins developed by Autodesk, but I actually have to look into to see if there is any. But for example, right, so you select one app and then you add it to your account, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we develop at Contact, we developed two apps, right? So the first one we started to develop, but it's integrated with BIM 360, is Transfer App, right? So Transfer App basically it's trying to fill a gap within the BIM 360, let's say, a platform. So one of the issues, like for example, I show you like my account, but then for example, I'm a design and engineering company. I have my account, and then the client or the contractor or the owner will have their own account, right? And then you'll probably have to transfer files on a regular basis between accounts, or even thinking about transfer between projects and so forth. So you currently cannot do that on with the BIM 360. So we developed this app which actually allows you to do that. So for
Mm-hmm.
example, I log in on this app, and then I have the possibility to log in with two BIM 360 accounts. So for example, I can say, okay, this is my account, and then I have listed different things I'm going to explain you.
Yeah.
So basically, the one I show you in BIM 360, it's BIM AI, right? And
Yeah.
then this is the project we just created. It's empty because we haven't dropped any file into it, right?
Yeah.
But then you basically have access to your BIM 360 account through this one. For example, I can log in with one of my colleagues' account, for example. It's also connected to BIM AI. But for example, he will not have access to the same projects I have because he has like restricted access. You see, and then I can decide if I have some files on the BIMvoice, for example, or maybe I can take like I go to the ABC. I can go to the project files, so I can take the DXF, and then I decided to move it here and the other. Right.
I see.
So this is a kind of simple app, but it's filling a huge gap there. And then you have all the others are basically. I'm not sure if you are familiar with the A360, the drive, the previous drive, which was the personal drive, or before BIM 360,
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
was a BIM 360 team,
Yeah. Yeah. I remember.
which was having this integration with Revit, and people were working on BIM 360 team. And sometimes there are people which want to migrate from BIM 360 team to the new BIM 360. So they want to transfer their projects and maybe get some files from the old one to the new one. So you can do this using this app. And another one, so that will be the transfer app. Let's see if I'm going back to my apps. We just released recently. So one of the missing parts when you look at Navisworks and then you look at the BIM coordination, one of the missing parts is the 4D simulation, right? So you have the construction simulation, right?
Yeah.
And in BIM management, when we are talking about clashes, we are talking about two types of clashes. Let's say geometrical ones, which is the most common clashes we extract or
Yes.
try to identify in our project, and the other one is time related clashes.
Overlapping. Yeah, exactly.
On big projects, for example, you have let's say we have two disciplines like structure and MEP, right? So each discipline will actually develop their own models and their own schedules for the execution, right? And then when you bring them together, you try to identify those parts or somewhere in the project where, let's say, MEP is placed before the structure, which is not possible, for example, right? So that's what we call the time clash, um, right? Because the order activities is not following the logical one. It's
Yes.
mainly because it happens because all these models, including like we can see the schedule like a model, like a time model, right? Were created in isolation, right? So you can bring them together. You can start doing also coordination in this direction and kind of aligning the construction work. So this is the latest one. So this part was missing from BIM 360. So we basically created or developed this app, and um, like I mentioned, you have to integrate it with your account. But once you have it integrated, right, we have a nice how-to here. It's like how to integrate it is the first step because you actually need to have administrator access or to ask your administrator to do the integration for you. And then we have a nice video kind of showcasing the workflow a little bit. And it's pretty simple. We can add links to these resources. But for example, you log in directly with your BIM 360 credentials. So I'm not gonna log in with my colleague account. I'm gonna log in with my account, right? And then like before, right? So you get this tree where you can actually navigate to your projects or to the project you have access with your BIM 360 account credentials, and then you can um, yeah, we can take the 4D folder because it was made for the purpose of the 4D model, right? And then directly from your BIM 360 account, it will open in the viewer. It will open the model, the 3D model of your file, right? And
Yeah.
now you can actually start creating. I can move this on a little bit out. So yeah, we can start creating using this simple interface. We can start creating the 4D model, for example. So let's see a little bit of a functionality. So here in the left corner, we have like start simulation, stop simulation. You can change the speed of the simulation. You can download the schedule you created. It is going to be saved like F4D, but it's a JSON format. And then you can just upload the schedule if you have it.
Mm-hmm.
Here is just where it's written full. You can define the time window you want to see on the project. I'm going to show you this. Basically, it's not going to work here, but you have the possibility to load a second model, for example. So let's go back to the models. So if I'm going here and oh no, project files. So I have here, let's say I have this basic sample, and I'm just going to open the Revit file for the structure. As you can see here, you have access to your different versions. You can even pick a previous version to create the schedule or the newest one. But then I'm going to open this one, right, which is pretty small. So this is the structure which I have in this file. And I say I want to do the simulation actually for both files. So when I'm going to the basic sample, I'm going to pick also the architecture to add it to this. And then now, bam, we have the architecture loaded here. And then you can start thinking creating a new project. So we thought about this idea of projects, especially for the 4D, because you start doing this kind of add different models together, like federation or creating the timeline. So we can create this new project here called BIMvoice. We can save it, and then we can actually have access to it in the project explorer. So these are basically the 4D models or 4D projects you are creating, right? So I will go back to the BIMvoice, and then I want to do like the or to add activities or tasks only for the structure. I have this model tree here. I'm going to close the architecture, and then now I can actually start. I have this button here, add new task, and then I'm just gonna keep the dates like I have them. But yeah, you can define like the task names, task type, build, demolition, or temporary, and then the start and the end date. So you can say file. So I created the task. I have it here. If I want to edit it, for example, I just come here and then start adding more files to it, right? I save it. And then, of course, you want to have like a really flexible way to create the schedule. So I can add more tasks. So let me show you. So when you hover over the specific task here,
Yeah.
so you have this small button like add new task after or add a task before, for example. So for example, if you want to add it before, it's like site organization, right? It's going to be like temporary. You have no objects, but it's going to take 1 day, right? So you do it before. It's not going to show something on for the simulation. Only if you have like in your model, I don't know, maybe some containers or maybe you have the fence for the site and so forth. And then once you keep going and then start adding more caps, for example, you can think about the caps of the create. You see, maybe before casting the caps, I want to do the foundations here, the
The
reinforcement,
reinforcement.
and so
Yeah.
forth. So you go ahead and create this, create or add activities for all the elements you have here. You save it, for example.
Yeah.
Let's see how the simulation looks like. Wait, I cannot see it now. So basically now the simulation is running. Let's
Yeah,
see.
but it's the first day where you have the organization of the site and you don't have anything.
Yeah. Is the first day where I have this temporary, but then it starts. And now it's a pretty high speed, right? So it's 24-hour speed. So it's gonna start adding the elements here. We can look at another one which I added more. I think more activities. So this is another model. This is also running. Yeah. But it's pretty slow, so I have to stop it. And then, of course, you have the possibility here. You can download the video and save it on your local computer.
Uh-huh. As a what format it is?
I think it's something web, let's see, WebM. So it's a standard format for web, but you can take it and convert it if you want to MP4 or whatever. And you can even think about sharing your video on YouTube, right? So you can
Uh-huh.
sign
Okay.
and then say,
That's pretty cool.
look what I did. You have to give some authorization. I'm not even sure if it's on my account. Yeah, let's see.
What's the price for this? It's processing.
Yeah, so for this one, we can go to upgrade. So it's 20 euros a month. So if you want to do 4D simulation, I think it's the lowest price on the market. So you can use it for free. I think up to 15 tasks or something like that.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you can just experiment with it, but once you, so for example, advanced sample, I don't even have the a subscription for myself. But I think even for this project, so for example, if I want to add a new task, let's say, just you see, with
Yeah.
free version of the 4D planner, you can create up to
Up to
15
15
tasks,
tasks.
upgrade to premium plan to for unlimited functionality.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
basically, the difference is like you have now for 15 tasks, you have access to all the functionality we have within the app. But if you want to create these schedules, then you have to update to the premium, which will give you access to unlimited number of activities.
Sure. That sounds cool.
And another thing, basically, we are working because we talk about we talked about coordination. So, for example, leave. So we have the channel on the channel of the company. It's one thing we are working on. It's a model checker. So this is not released yet. I'm gonna stop the music, but basically you can do the clash detection on or using Navisource or BIM 300, BIM 360, right? But one thing which is missing is actually checking if the textual information or the information you have linked to your elements within the 3D model, right? It actually fulfills the information requirements you have defined on the project, right? So, and then you can create different validation schema, right? So we talked about the information requirements validation. So here we show how to create or to check, like, for example, for asset managers, it's important to make sure the serial number is unique, for example, for the pumps, or installation date is not smaller than the date when the pump was actually installed. Maybe you want to do some other operation with that information, like getting notified when there are 5 years since you installed the pump, so that you can do some maintenance. 5 years probably is going to be too much for a pump, but let's say depending on the other systems you are using, right?
Yeah.
And then so it's going to show you, like, you create this validation schema. I think I have to play it, right? You create this validation schema, then you check the model. It's running in background. It's going to tell you when the report was successfully built, and then you can, yeah, download it if you want to, or you can actually start visualizing in browser the same. So this is also built on top of Forge. And then we have this validation workers in the background, getting the information from your model, performing the checks based on the rules you created. So this is something which is going to compete with Solibri in terms of rules checking. So you can create rules, and then you validate your models, and then see which rules are broken. We are working on having a BIM 360 integration with issues, right? Because you do the coordination in BIM 360, and then you want to have the coordination with your team around the issues you find. Something more interesting will be like when discussing about these issues, to basically be able, the ones which are easy to fix them on the go once you have the coordination. So that's going to probably make use of something called design automation API from Autodesk Forge. But I'm not going to enter into much details about Forge. But yeah, so if you want to expand the capability, custom tailor something, you can make use of Forge to create your own apps, or contact us to develop your apps and have something which will fit the needs.
I understand. Okay, so I guess if someone is interested, can find you on LinkedIn and
Yeah,
in your company page.
yeah. Or I can share my email address as well. But I'm on LinkedIn.
Yeah, as usual, I'll put those details. Thank you very much for showing us around.
Yeah, well, I hope I cover some of the most interesting aspects. Although I will have like to actually be able to also go through the collaboration, which is actually something interesting. But people can find some more things about that on the internet on the Autodesk side.
Or we can have another episode sometime when you can go through that.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, of course. But if someone wants to stay up to date with what's happening, and there will be also new releases or some news. So Autodesk has this Autodesk Cloud, construction cloud, which explain much better than me, like the purpose envisioned for BIM 360. But not only, there are some other solutions like Assemble, Building Connect, and PlanGrid, which are also are really powerful tools. And yeah, who's interested can subscribe for newsletters, and then can find out more from the information provided by Autodesk on their website.
I see. Yeah, well, that sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.